order for the September 19th workshop meeting of the planning board. All rise for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okey dokey. Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of our prior workshop of August 15th. Do I hear a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Moved by Ms. Cook, seconded by Mr. Mattson. All in favor? I guess I should appoint an alternate. I'll appoint, don't know how much voting we're going to do tonight, but I'll appoint Ken. And I'm also going to appoint Ken at the next regular meeting because he's missed a turn at a couple of the regular meetings.
If that's all right.
Unless the two of you want to pass back and forth,
Okay.
then I don't care.
Or I won't come and you both can be alternates.
Okay, so our attorney will be joining us shortly. Tonight, what we're going to do is go over what we want to incorporate into the land use code to comply with LD 2003. We'll be using this set of questions / comments / agreements that we've already done. And we'll walk through them. There's a copy of this in the OneDrive, and the red is the attorney's comments on what we turned in. We had this at the prior meeting, just so you know. And then hopefully, if there are related code changes that we need to make at the same time in June, hopefully we'll have time to discuss those. For instance, the one to change the lot size in the rural neighborhood would be a separate warrant question. And just for your information, also in the OneDrive prior to the lawyer signing on, before I get there, remember that one of the things we need to decide is the lot area by district, lot area per dwelling unit for every district. If we don't decide that tonight, we'll just have the attorney incorporate it, and then when we get the draft, we can figure that later. And in many cases, maybe it doesn't have to change from the lot size, but and then we need to make a decision on impervious and a few other things that are in this handout. This one, yep. It's in the OneDrive, and it's got answers in red. So if you don't see answers in red, then you've got.
Do I have the right thing up?
That's subdivision. Looks like you grabbed the subdivision stuff. So you have to go back to the OneDrive, and it's so that everybody has it.
Is it the rural neighborhood?
No, it's got the number 1 on it, so that you know that's the first thing to open.
Got it.
Okay. Also, just as information, I would guess, I don't know if you've had time to look at it. Lovell had a special town meeting to incorporate changes to their code for LD 2003. I'm not saying we should copy them, but just for your information. I put some information on it for you. One, obviously, it's just for your information and knowledge. 2 is I marked in red which ones are the warrant articles and whether they passed or failed. So.
May I ask a very foolish question? That is, are we in the folder that says this workshop?
We're in the folder that says current meeting materials.
Right. And the workshop date today.
And then it says September 19th workshop.
Right, because I have no red in
I don't
any of
either.
this.
I just have the
She's going to make copies. Sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah,
My copy
there's
doesn't
no
have
red.
red on it either.
No, there's no red in that.
Were the
Okay.
problem
Thank you.
children
So
today?
for all of you non-techies, this is how you
Now,
make
that's
the red
question.
show
You're in the
up.
right spot, but you have the wrong
I
thing.
actually don't know this myself.
So can you?
You
give me
have
the
to,
doc-
you have
Here,
to,
I'll show
you
you.
have to open it as a Microsoft Word document
You're-
on it.
Oh.
It's the second
Oh.
document.
Or you have to download
This
it
is
and
how
then
many
open it as a
documents should be.
Yes,
Microsoft
yeah,
No,
Word
in the
document.
first document, it says number one.
That's why it
But
doesn't
it's-
do it.
But
So-
number one
I feel like a dodo.
is this.
Oh, we just want to be tested.
Well, you know, I don't like it.
So what?
It is, it's
So that's
just,
the
it's
question.
just,
It's this
you also sent it by
And-
email,
The
right?
second one?
So
And then the
if you
second
open
one-
it,
It doesn't,
Is-
it's a
is
different
the lawyer-
document.
Yeah.
It's
The
a
second
different
one-
document.
The second one is the
Well, we're-
lawyers.
And we also have this
I
memo
think I wanna-
19100,
Really, I
Yes.
Yeah, I have that
No,
one.
which,
this
well,
is
this is where
a draft.
their
This
definitions
is
are all
not the
listed out.
lawyer.
that's the
correct.
definitions,
Oh,
Yes,
DECD.
it should be.
That grant that goes
Yes.
along with,
I see red there,
Making
Ken,
sure
but it's
I'm
not
not
the
looking
same
at the wrong
document
document.
as
This one?
number
This is.
one.
Number one
No.
is questions.
That's, they're our questions.
Yes.
This is a
It is
different
that one. I
document.
don't know why
That's
you're only
right.
getting one page.
That's
It has
the
red in it,
CCD.
but the other one
That's
didn't
part of
have
That's
red.
the
Can you hit
state.
down?
that's part of the,
Right, I don't care
And
about
the-
that.
Guide for
You got it.
today.
I know that.
Okay.
In fact,
just
I don't
saying
care
is it
about
has-
the town.
Go up there.
It has in DC,
Right.
that is from.
I don't know how to
those
open it
definitions are
as a
from here.
Microsoft document.
Hold on, Dee, I think we just got it. I'll come show
That's why I
you.
wanted to make sure all the, that's what I thought, I wanted to be sure though.
It doesn't matter, I
No,
can
it's
see,
not.
I can tell questions from
That's all right.
answers.
We'll have hard copies in just a few minutes.
May I, before we get that, ask one question, please?
Yeah, sure.
And it has to do with, I think it's number 5 here, or some, oh, yes. This additional dwelling unit, you say we have to see the difference between, or define the difference between ADUs and additional dwelling units, and these are the same words and the same initials. And I think the ADU means those little houses where people, you know, mother-in-law apartments, don't let me talk, and other things. But are we saying that these other, when we're using words, additional housing units, shouldn't that be additional housing allowances? Isn't that what we're talking about? They're not just units, these are the allowances that are allowing multiple dwellings on particular lots that are
Well,
coming from.
that
So
in the
can we
law,
use different language, please?
in the, well, that's up to the board, really.
Well, I'm asking the board, if the board is here.
Well, I'm not, let me make sure the board understands. So DECD has the affordable housing, it's just called, I think, bonus, yeah, affordable housing density bonus. That's one arm. Then there's the dwelling unit allowance, which is just dwelling unit allowance, which is to have multiple dwelling units on a lot. And then there's the accessory dwelling units and the accessory dwelling unit allowance. So Aga has joined us, I see. So, you know, if you want to be consistent, call it what the state's calling it, which should be dwelling unit allowance, accessory dwelling unit allowance, and
Well, I need
affordable
a-
housing bonus, density bonus.
I need a glossary.
Okay, well, we'll make sure we have one. All right. Hello, welcome, Ms. Dixon. Good to see you, Aga.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you all. It's
Good
been
to
a
see you
while.
all. I don't know if you know everybody on this board.
I think there are some new faces.
So why don't we just, you know me, obviously. Why don't we just start with Angie?
Cook. Angie Cook.
Hi, Angie. Nice to
Hi,
meet you.
nice to meet you.
Ralph Madsen, how are you?
Hi.
Kathy DePietro?
And
I
Ken
know
Gibbs,
familiar face.
Ken
Oh,
Gibbs, hi.
The last three I know.
Yeah, we're all together here.
Hi, Aga.
Okay, so,
Thank you.
Aga, what we hope to accomplish by the end of this meeting, which might be aggressive, but we'll see, is just to be able to have you and your team go back and prepare a draft. We probably won't have all the decisions made that it could be a public hearing draft, but if we can get to the point where we've actually got a draft so that we can move to a public hearing, maybe a month after that, like say in early, maybe no later than sometime in November or December is what we're thinking. And just so you know, when we start mapping out the schedule, we'd like to be able to fit 2 public hearings in before we have to give it to the select board in, I think it'd be at the very latest mid-March. So I think that would put our last public hearing in February probably, or something along January or February, actually. But we thought to be able to make adjustments, particularly if we have a lot of input, that we wanted to be able to build that into the schedule. So I don't know if you have any opening comments, anything you want to let us know about that's new or different with the laws, but
I assume that you all know that there has been an amendment to the law. It's, primarily what it does is it pushes back the applicability date to July 1st, 2024. But also this is LD 1706.
right.
That also included a couple of other add-ons that, I'm still trying to wrap my head around, frankly, but one of them is with respect to accessory dwelling units. So the legislature added some language to section 4364B, paragraph 5, which is the paragraph that talks about, ADUs not being exempt from shoreline zoning. And they added some language that says that except that a municipality may not categorically prohibit ADUs in the shoreland zone that would otherwise meet DEP rules in your shoreland zoning ordinance. So I think this stems from situations where some municipalities have just a ban on accessory dwelling units in the shoreline zone. I don't think that is the case for Bridgton. The law makes it now preempts municipalities from doing that. I think that was the major change. There's also a clarification to the definition of affordable housing development to address that legal loophole that we flagged, and Deb, that you also flagged during the public hearing, during the DECD rulemaking. So the legislature heard us and fixed it, so that's good news. Those are really the only changes. DECD now has to go through a second round of rulemaking to incorporate those changes into their rules. I haven't been following that rulemaking, but I will, and I'll let you know if anything comes of it that is beyond these two
Yep.
these 3
Just-
changes.
Just so you know, Aga, the board does have the draft rules, which I think DECD, that have been incorporated since 1706. And those, they do have those in their OneDrive. And, yeah, my understanding is, I guess, they're going through the public comment now, or it might even be closing by now, so. All right. So, guess let's roll. So the first thing we wanted to do was to incorporate a lot area per dwelling unit in addition to the lot size that's listed in the dimensional standards chart. And we have not firmly decided on all of them. The board had reached consensus on changing the rural neighborhood district from a 1 acre lot size, 2 acre, 80,000 square feet to a 1 acre lot size. And there's been quite a lot of discussion on the board and a little bit with the public that came. And assuming we want to keep that, we would want that to be a separate warrant question.
Okay.
And
For just the RM district?
Yeah, just for the RN district. And I guess if you have any input on potential, so people have brought couple things. One is, there's a fear that's been expressed to me that if we have too many things on the warrant, everything will get voted down. I'm not sure I agree with that, because I've seen 13 questions go to the warrant and all but one pass. And then the other thing is just, what are the drawbacks of doing that from a legal perspective?
To have multiple warrant articles, it's,
And just changing lot size, given this law, do you see anything obvious or non-obvious that we've missed?
no, I mean, I think there are some, some non-legal considerations which you really flagged. Is it going to confuse the voters to have too much on the warrant? Is it, sometimes we all get frozen by the paradox of choice, so to speak, and just it's easier to vote no on everything if you don't know what the implications are. So that is a real phenomenon, and if you have a good policy reason to exempt a question or to separate out a question, that's fine. My job will be to make sure that it all flows together so that no matter what the votes turn out to be, you have an end result that makes sense. So sometimes that makes the crafting of the warrant article a little challenging, but it's usually something we can do. I think mostly, Deb, to answer your question, it's a policy decision. You know your community better than I do, and you're going to know if overwhelming them with too many questions is going to be result in a good outcome or a bad outcome. I've really seen it work both ways. So with something like this LD where the question on the LD 2003 compliance, I would encourage you to sort of leave that as the purely, this is everything we have to do in order to comply with LD 2003. And then perhaps limit pulling out separate questions for those issues that go beyond what you are required to do by the change in law. Because you're going to want to be able to explain to the voters that, question one, we really have no choice. This is to be in compliance with the new state law.
Okay. All right, so any questions about, so we want to add that line, lot area per dwelling unit in the dimensional table. And I guess it would go, be under minimum lot size.
Not to make this
Yeah.
more confusing. Sorry, Aga. There was a definition of residential dwelling unit in the, which, in this document, where if you read it, I think that would serve a better purpose for what we're trying to do here.
So you'd like to change our definition of dwelling unit to residential dwelling unit?
Well, we have residential use was defined here. One of the things it says is it excludes certain things from this definition, one of which is transient housing or short-term rentals. So, in a sense, what we're saying is, this goes back to you, Deb.
D.
I mean, D, sorry. I think
Just
it's
a
a very simple way of
Well-
making sure, see, I look at L2000, LD2, whatever the heck the numbers are, as a way to increase housing in our communities. And we have a serious problem there. It isn't to increase apartments, it's increase long-term housing for people and town of Bridgton.
So our,
And I'm just saying,
yep,
I don't want to have a situation where we do this and then we create a lot of short-term rentals.
so we already have in our definition of dwelling unit, I mean, we could call it residential dwelling unit, but we already have in our definition of dwelling unit, it already excludes, it basically says, design, built, and used for permanent or seasonal human habitation with each unit containing cooking, blah, 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 includes manufactured homes as blah, 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 but does not include motel units, hotel units, boarding houses, recreational vehicles, or other residential units intended primarily for transient occupancy. To me, you could maybe make a lot less changes to the code and just add in it says, where it says, does not include motel units, hotel units, just
I
add
would
short-term
like-
rentals.
I would like that we do something to put a lid on it. And if we can do that in what we define today as dwelling unit, that's fine by me,
Yeah,
okay? I'm just saying is, when I was looking through this today, and I'm reading the definitions, I'm thinking, this is a great definition, because it's very clear that what we're trying to do with a ADU is create housing, not create short-term rentals.
yeah. So, Aga, could you come, so Aga, you actually gave us a comment that that definition we have essentially already excludes short-term rentals, but I suppose we could make it dead obvious by putting short-term rentals in the definition.
I think it can, and then what I would say is we could add the word short-term rentals up to the list of what does not include, but also add, to clarify the last line, the rental of a dwelling unit is considered a usual normal use. Say the long-term rental of a dwelling unit, to make that clear. So using a dwelling unit for an apartment, as a landlord-tenant situation would be acceptable.
But then do you have to determine what the short term and the long term are?
I think you would.
That's right. Yeah, you will have to have a definition for short-term rental, at least. And you probably don't need one for long-term rental, because
So
that would
if,
be obvious from the context.
So
But,
here's-
short,
go ahead,
we
Aga,
do
I'm
not have
sorry.
a definition for short-term rental right now.
So here's the issue I have, is if we put in we can put in a definition of short-term rental, but the way this reads today, as we did it with our last applicant, it excludes transient rentals, and we said, for that particular application, we said 30 days, and it was accepted by the applicant. If we call out short-term rentals, then we're gonna be putting them in the use chart, and we're gonna be deciding where they go. And I think we'd have to allow them in every single district. So then we have to, if you don't want LD 2003 to apply to short-term rentals, then you have to somehow tie those two together. I almost wonder if it's easier just to leave this definition the way it is, because the interpretation of it is a dwelling unit. You could say, I like Aga's idea of just saying the long-term rental of a dwelling unit is considered typical use. But I think we're gonna start getting into STR regulations, and if we start that.
I think what we've got ahead of us is that we're gonna end up doing that. I don't think we can avoid it now, but at some point it's gonna hit us. We're gonna have to address it. And I think that if we're messing around with definitions now, I would prefer to put the foundation in place where if later on that we need to create some ordinance or laws or relative to STRs.
But what you could do is, you could say the long-term rental of a dwelling unit is considered usual, and you could you could say, you could define transient occupancy as less than 30 days. My fear about, so right now, the way this is written, at least my interpretation, and I think legal supports that, is STRs are not allowed in town as dwelling units. And then you go to the use chart, and there's no such thing as transient housing or short-term rentals. So what that means is, as it stands today, if an applicant comes before us, or even before Brenda, the dwelling unit does not include an STR. And if you then go to the use chart, there's no transient housing. The only way somebody could get something approved would be to say, well, it's a similar use to this, some commercial use. I'm just wondering if,
I mean,
We
and
just wanna
I'm sorry
stick to
bring
that.
this, I'm sorry to bring this up. But if you have short-term rentals defined as a use, then if there's a dwelling unit and there's a change of use, then it has to go through a review process.
right, but right now they're not allowed, period. The way this code is interpreted, they're not allowed,
And
period.
how come we have them all over the town?
That's what I was gonna.
Because I think people build homes, generally build homes with that intent. And Brenda, our CEO, doesn't know the intent other than they're building a home. So that's why. I mean, we can add it, then we're gonna have to decide what districts it's in. It's gonna be very, I think that will definitely make this go down with the ship. It would have to be, I think there's too much to consider.
One thing I just want to put on your radar, you probably already know this, but the housing committee that developed LD 2003 has been charged with reconvening and dealing with short-term rental regulations statewide. Now, I don't know what will come of that legislative effort, but I suspect something will come of it.
Yeah.
And it might be, if you're in a place where you are not prepared to dive into full-on short-term rental regulations, and that is a project, it is often a very contentious process to develop those rules at the local level. So if you're not prepared to do that at this juncture, that's probably not fine, because I suspect the legislature is gonna have something to say about this in the near future. And we might wanna just wait and see what they have to say. Right now, as Deb noted, short-term rentals are not allowed in Bridgton, and under the current definitions, I think you would be hard pressed to find it listed as a permitted use. So unless you want to change that immediately, I would encourage you to sort of hold off on developing STR regs until we've heard a little bit more from the
I
state
think-
house.
I'll recognize Dean in a sec. I think one of the things we realized, or at least I realized, is that I overlooked what it said here about transient housing. And so we haven't asked the question we've asked the question, but we haven't written it up in the findings, we haven't made it a condition, we haven't done any of that until the most recent application, which had 15 residential apartments. And of course, we know that prior to that, there was supposed to be 4 residential apartments in another building, and at least half of them became short-term rentals. But as it stands right now,
But we don't have short-term rentals.
as it stands right now, I think shortest way to say it is put our foot down, and when an applicant comes, make sure they understand the definition of dwelling unit and write it as a condition or in the findings. For Brenda, for single homes, I don't know what the solution is, other than she has to ask the question.
But if they're renting out their home and then start renting it out Airbnb, that should be a change of use, right?
It should be, but the
As a
question is, how does she
short-term rental.
flag it, and that's,
Right.
That's where
and that's where the
that's where I-
regulations start to get
That's where I'm
Well, I
getting.
will say this, I know that Denmark, Conway, Brownfield, a couple other neighboring towns have went, and I know Conway went to the Supreme Court and they got shot down with short-term
They've all
rentals.
been shot down.
Yeah, there's people, it's just, it's,
Dee, you were gonna say something? I think it's, I think we stick to our guns, and I think we try to figure out later what we do about individual homes. I mean, maybe Brenda can have something she gives to the, I don't know what you think about the Saga, but maybe there can be something she gives to them that certifies what the use is for. Dee?
Well, when someone builds a single home and they have to get a building permit, they also have to get occupancy permit, right?
Right.
And so there are conditions that apply to homes that don't appear before this board, beyond the building permit. I don't think it's inappropriate for the code officer to say when they're looking at all of the zoning requirements that it's stated in our zoning ordinance, there is no place for transient housing. But somebody has to be made aware of these things. And see, the problem is that when this industry started, no one took it as an industry. They just took it as like a person renting out their house when they're on vacation. Yeah, I know it's a thorny problem. I was going to suggest, rather than looking at short-term and long-term, looking at full-time residents. Because when people are renting to a family, the idea is it is for a longer period, but it is a full-time. They live there, they go to school from there, they work from there. Because when you're dealing with short and long, you've got to come up with a period. But my other problem for AGA is, if it's unclear because the ordinance does not specifically define something, isn't that just as permissive because it's absent from the ordinance as it would be accepting because it's not treated in the ordinance?
No, I mean, you know, the way we interpret the ordinance starts with the definitions, but we can't define every term in the world. That's why Oxford and Webster's exists. So we have that language in the definitions section of your code that basically says if there is no definition here, you use your usual and customary understanding of that term, and you can look at a dictionary definition or other context, or just use your common sense as to what that means.
So absent the term transient, then you would have an issue, but because you've got transient in there, you've covered it, you're saying.
I'm saying that your definition of dwelling unit is pretty clear as a legal matter. Like you have excluded from that definition transient uses, and you've listed examples of those. So if somebody were to come in with a proposal to, I don't know, develop a subdivision for short-term rental use, you could reasonably conclude based on that definition that that use is not allowed. But if you're worried about that and you want to provide clarity to your community, then the way to do it is include the phrase short-term rental in your definition. And, you know, if you want to, as an interim measure, you can add it to your use table and just say no across the board in every district.
If
But
I could,
think, you know, a lot of communities are in the same situation as you are, where short-term rentals are fairly new as a land use and as an activity. And it's really been an evolution, right? We've had summer cottage rentals for a very long time. You have an entire business model, you know, around lakes in Maine, where people rent out their cottages for weeks or months or the whole summer. Those vacation rental ideas. And over time, very incrementally, the rental periods for summer cottages as well as for other uses, other buildings, has gotten shorter and shorter. So that now you're talking about weekend rentals or 2 or 3 nights, not, 7 days or 14 days or a whole summer. So this use is kind of new, or this version of activity is kind of new. And the question that communities struggle with is how to, is it more like a residence and should it be treated like a residential use? Or is it more like, the B&B, the inn,
Right.
the small hotel, and should it be treated like a commercial use? And frankly, a lot of communities kind of split the difference and treat it like a home occupation. So there's a lot of ways of how you want to regulate it. What I would say to you is that entering into this arena of regulating short-term rentals and deciding where they should and shouldn't be allowed is definitely a project in and of itself. And it always gets controversial and heated, especially in communities where these activities are occurring, which includes Bridgton.
Yeah.
So I would say if you want to tackle it, by all means, go for it, but keep it separate from the LD 2003 stuff.
We got Tori, then Ken's been,
Yeah, I was just gonna say, exactly that I think maybe we should stick to August's original recommendation, that perhaps that's a bit controversial if we're trying to get LD 2003 passed, and I feel like perhaps the time now should be focused on getting that implemented, and that the short-term rental conversation is a whole nother beast that perhaps is for another time.
that's what we've decided many times. Ken?
Yeah, maybe August knows, is there a successful town that has regulations for short-term rentals that has passed muster and the courts have not rejected? I know the courts have rejected some towns in their attempt to do this. For instance, South Portland has promoted, I know, a rather extensive short-term rental definition and law. Is that a possible model?
There are many models. I'm working with a number of communities throughout the state to develop ordinances that fit their needs. And it really is community specific, Ken. Just think about what kind of rentals might occur in the Lakes region versus in downtown Bangor or Augusta or Portland. Those are very different markets and needs. So what I would say is that there are many different models. Some of them have been tested by the courts and have survived. There are actually lawsuits about short-term rentals that go beyond Maine and are throughout the country that will have implications on what we can and cannot do here in Maine because they deal with constitutional issues. But the case in Maine really, the recent case in Maine on short-term rentals really focused just on how much you charge for licensing or registration fees and how to properly assess that fee so that it doesn't become a tax. The act of regulating short-term rentals itself is within your police power. So you have authority to regulate short-term rentals. There are just bookends on how you may do it.
So folks,
Can I
one
say
more
one?
D, and then
All right.
I think we've
Yeah, I
already
just wanna
spent a
ask-
half hour on this
I
topic,
know,
and this
and
is
I
why it
didn't-
needs
I
to
didn't
be
bring it up.
separate.
I just want to know this, leaving aside the problems that we have in other housing, we're here to deal with the housing that is supposed to serve a particular purpose set out by this legislation, right?
Right.
That was to promote affordable housing. And to do that, they were going to have various schemes that would allow a higher density. Okay, because those houses or a creation of this legislation, can the rules dealing with this legislation specify that those particular houses are not subject to transient vacation rentals,
Or they're excluded.
that they would be
You
excluded?
can't, but
Because
Yes.
it just deals with this one
you already have it
Can we
though.
revisit
group
this
of-
after we
But
get
I'm
all the
talking about
passed?
this one group of housing that people seem to be very concerned about, that if we increase density to have affordable housing, unless we have some protection, that affordable housing is going to can turn into something other than what the law.
Understand.
So if we're just dealing with these additional housing opportunities created by 2003, can those, because they are a creation of this law, can the enactment of rules to underscore this law include a restriction on short-term vacation rentals?
Yes, is the short answer. You can do that for any of your dwelling units, including the ones that are created as a result of this legislation. So for example, some communities have said in their ordinances, any dwellings constructed as a result of the additional dwelling unit allowance under section 43, whatever, cannot be used for short-term rental use. Then you have to define it, but,
You gotta define short-term rental.
but yes, you can do that.
Well, isn't that a
And I
start?
think that would actually support the housing bill, the housing law, and its purpose and intent.
So if we do that with the, so if we were to do that with the affordable housing density bonus, I'm wondering if we really need to do it with that, because that's gonna, I would think in most cases, that's gonna come to the planning board, and we're gonna point to our definition of dwelling unit and make a condition that they can't do that, or write up in the findings that it's, a change of use. With the dwelling unit allowance, maybe that is more straightforward, but then when we start defining short-term rental, I would very much hesitate to put it in the use chart. Because once we put no or yes in the use chart with STR next to it, I just see that failing, and then we're kicking back to this anyway, or the state's gonna tell us what to do. But maybe we can do it with the dwelling unit allowance. I'm hesitant personally with the accessory unit allowance, because we're only allowing one accessory unit right now. We already only allow one accessory unit now. And there's people in this town that need the money and maybe are renting out just a little attachment to their house that's an accessory dwelling unit. And I like the fellow that came a couple of weeks ago, that uses it to save money for his kids for college. And it's not some fancy place on a lake.
Right.
So if there were an easy way to do this that doesn't sink the ship, which then we have to follow the state law without anything yet in our ordinance, then I'd be okay with the dwelling unit allowance, just speaking for myself, but I would,
Bear in mind that right now, your starting point is a prohibition on short-term rentals.
right.
Right.
That's not good.
So if you start adding in language that says, short-term rentals are prohibited within an ADU or an additional dwelling unit, you then raise the legal question, well, does that mean that they're allowed someplace else?
That's true.
And it does raise some uncertainty.
And that's what worries me about
Yeah,
changing this is,
same.
Perhaps the CEO could, given what this ordinance says, when they give a permit out, could put something on the permit. I don't know, Aga, if there's something that can be done there that
else?
spells it out.
I'll say this, short-term rentals are a lot of the revenue in this town for
Right.
a lot of the year. This town, where it's turning into a year-round, it already is a year-round, but it's becoming more populous all year
So
round.
you would be worried about doing
I
that?
would absolutely be very worried.
About
to-
Brenda doing that?
Yeah, I would not, I mean, we cannot do away with short-term rentals, that would, no.
Yeah, bear in mind also that you have a situation right now where these uses, we know they're occurring in the community all over the place. And, you know, I think if the town wants to take enforcement action against that, that needs to be a charge from the select board. Typically, what communities do is they develop, because this use has been sort of slow and incremental and ordinances and rules have not kept up with it. What communities typically tend to do is they'll go through a short-term rental regulation process where they develop either licensing or registration requirements and list where the uses are
Brittany
allowed
has
in
to
the zoning
enforce that.
ordinance.
And she
Right.
cannot right now.
And she,
And once you go through that public process, you then provide people with an amortization period, where if they've been doing these activities on the assumption that they're allowed and they didn't meet, and if the town has not enforced, which is the case in Bridgton, then you give them a grace period essentially of anywhere from a year, 2 years, 3 to 5 years, whatever you feel is fair, for them to shut down the operation and move it elsewhere, or find some other way to bring themselves into compliance with the new rules.
yeah.
So those kinds of
question.
grace periods or, you know, amnesty provisions, sometimes they're called sunset clauses. Those are a very common aspect of short-term rental regulation. And it provides a mechanism by which the community slowly transitions into compliance in a situation where many people are currently doing this activity, even though the ordinance prohibits it.
Okay, so folks, I'm going to propose that we don't,
I think we should table this.
we should
Yeah,
table anything
absolutely.
with short-term rentals. I think we should rely on the definition in our, that's in our code.
Yeah.
And, I mean, just, I think to the question Dee asked earlier and what Aga's talking about, the Oxford Dictionary, prior to our last application deliberation, I looked up the definition of transient housing. And, I mean, you can find them or you can find, and, you know, it was exactly what we decided is you have to rent for 30 days or
Yeah.
more. So that's pretty, I think that's pretty common knowledge.
May I just say one other thing, getting back to what Rolf was saying about residential? There's a residential and a commercial use of a housing structure. And so, for the people that need the income, and I know them too, if it's their primary residence and they are renting their primary residence, they should have every right to do so. If someone buys a structure, a residential structure, and doesn't live in it and uses it purely for
I
rentals,
understand, Dee.
then
This
there
is-
should be a difference in the law.
Absolutely, and when we get to the point of
right.
addressing this,
I just
then
wanted to
we'll,
make the
I mean, that, yes, I know, I think we have,
I didn't bring this up, if you recall.
no, but we've certainly talked about them being individual businesses, so I'd like to move on, because we have a lot to do. And when we get
Needs a
LD
change of use.
2003 done, then I think we address short-term rentals. I'm hesitant to
I'll be
even hold a workshop while we're working on LD 2003, because I think the two will get connected, and that's just me being a little
I
paranoid.
think you're right, you're probably.
It
right.
has to
absolutely
pass in
right.
July. If it doesn't pass, then it defaults to what the state law is, and then anything we wanted in here,
It's
it's,
gone.
we're gonna have to fix it later. So,
Well,
we good on that?
I'd like to move on then.
I would too. Okay, moving right along. So we've had a discussion about reducing the lot size in the rural neighborhood to an acre. That needs to be a separate warrant question. Do we want to vote on that now and then move on? Mr. Gibbs?
Can I still contend, without being contentious, that I think that if we're going to have an acre, that we should increase the frontage of the acre. I think if it's 150 feet and it's a real acre of 43,000, whatever, there's plenty of space to put a house on that piece of property. It has good depth, it has good side thing, and it preserves the concept of a rural neighborhood.
Maybe we shouldn't do any decision-making tonight, maybe just discussion.
So what do people think about that?
So it's basically asking for a 150-foot
Yeah,
buffer, basically, or frontage that they can't build on.
Front.
right.
Or just frontage.
I tell you, I have another suggestion, because I think that'll probably get voted down. People are gonna wanna go to 1 acre, they're not gonna wanna see 150 feet, because you're making it more restrictive. But what if, here's an option, is, you'll think I'm crazy, leave it as it is for now. In the subdivision regs, change the subdivision regs to have the same requirements for lot size as the land use code. That means in the rural neighborhood, they have to have 2 acres. Or say, you can only go to 1 acre in the subdivision if you have an interior road, if you have and it doesn't come off a public or road, public street. So Aga, we've had a situation now where 1 acre lots are being, so going to 1 acre has 2 aspects. One is trying to have more affordable lots for people to be able to buy and build a home. Or to split off a lot and get money so that you can, send your kid to college or whatever. And right now, a lot of those lots aren't splittable because they have to be split to be 2 acres. So 3 acre lot can't be split, even into 2 acre and a half lots. So that's one aspect which is kind of connected to affordable housing. The other aspect is that in our subdivision regs, an acre is required with 100 feet of frontage. And we've had some situations now where we've had some applicants that create a subdivision off a public road and just have a driveway leading to the house. And so by default, or because of this loophole, there are 1 acre lots being built on in the rural neighborhood facing the public road. So one way, I'm actually still in favor of 1 acre lots, or maybe 1.5, but the other thing to do so that people don't, so that would solve the problem for both sides. But if we really don't want to go to 1 acre lots, then maybe we should make the subdivision regs more restrictive so that that doesn't happen. And just, can you comment on that, Aga?
Yeah, as far as compliance with LD 2003, any of those approaches are fine. Leaving it as is fine. It's really, you just can't treat that second dwelling more restrictively than the first dwelling. So there are situations where communities require 1 acre for the first lot, for the first house, and then 2 acres for any additional house. That's not allowed anymore. Also keep in mind that under the definition and requirements for ADUs, you can't impose a minimum lot size on those on top of the minimum lot size for principal dwelling. So you could have, if you go down to 1 acre in the RN, you could potentially have 2 dwellings on that lot, one being the principal dwelling and one being the ADU. any extra dwellings would have to have more acreage. Right now, as your regulations are drafted, we have that provision in section 3-3C2, rules for determining conformance with dimensional standards. If more than one dwelling unit is constructed or established on a single parcel, all dimensional standards must be met for each dwelling unit. So, because you have that, as currently written, we have to put an exception to that for ADUs as far as minimum lot size is concerned. But for all other purposes, you're in compliance with LD 2003.
I think that's a very good suggestion, because it occurs to me that you have to think of what rural neighborhood means to people who are going to vote on this. And really, when you think about it, it's almost oxymoronic to talk about a rural neighborhood where you're increasing density. And so I think that the idea that AGA has is keeping it as it is, but allowing for these obviously smaller, non-obtrusive dwellings, which I think should be allowed everywhere under certain circumstances, I think is a much more acceptable way for people in this town that take the term rural neighborhood literally.
So if we change rural neighborhood to 1 acre, which has been the consensus of this board several times, and we keep rediscussing it.
Well, I wasn't here, so I'm sorry.
Well, that's okay. What it would mean if somebody wants to build a second unit on there with the dwelling unit allowance, or even with what's currently in here, they could build a second dwelling unit, but they have to have 200 feet of frontage.
Right.
And
Well, isn't
it
that?
has to meet all the other dimensional standards.
Yes, but we haven't changed the zoning to make that more restrictive. That's the zoning that we have now. So it's not as if we would be making it more difficult. What we're saying is, here's our land zoning use with our allowances and our dimensional requirements. If you can get it done within this amount of space, fine. If you can't, we're sorry. We haven't changed anything to make this new activity
Yep.
more restrictive.
So I want to vote one more time on changing to 1 acre, and I just would point out that in the rural neighborhood, we're requiring 80,000 square feet for a dwelling unit, but 40,000 square feet for a commercial business, which seems backwards to me. I think we ought to make I've lobbied here to make them equal. You still need the 100 feet of lot frontage per dwelling unit, and there is a maximum lot coverage specification of 30%. So, and a setback of 75. So how much damage is changing to 1 acre going to do? I mean, I actually started going through every lot in there. And frankly, folks, I could absolutely be wrong. There'll always be unintended consequences, but you have, I think Kathy did an exercise where she took the 25 feet for the sides, is that it?
25 feet for the sides and 75 feet for the roadside setback.
Yeah, and then you can only cover 30%. So you've got some percentage due to the setbacks and then some additional. And you have to have room in the rural neighborhood for septic and a well.
And they can't be in the buffer or the frontage.
Right, so, and we've said that in subdivisions, we've defined it as buildable area now, so we're taking out and we can put that in the land use if we want to too. So I'm not sure that we're gonna have a giant modification of the rural neighborhood, and again, I know I'm repeating myself, but it's 70% of the land mass of the town under 80,000 square feet, just doesn't go hand in hand with this. Ms. Miller?
Well, you know, all these dimensions don't mean anything to me. I'm more thinking about what's reasonable and rational and fair. And it was never my understanding why the commercial space needed to have 1 acre and homes for 2. So just for the sake of being consistent, I think that you either have to change the commercial use or change the residential use. Because it doesn't make any sense. And since making the 1 acre more normal, I guess, or it would fulfill other requirements and would not do, quote, a lot of damage, maybe that would be fine, but I still think that people aren't gonna like it.
Well, that's why we want a separate warrant question. Ken, and then I'd
Yeah,
like to make a
just,
motion.
just 2 things. One thing is that when the zoning was put together, the 1 acre for commercial, the people were thinking about places like the Little Mountain Store, that there would be little stores, little grocery things or things like that in the rural neighborhood, and by having a smaller lot that you would prevent large commercial developments in the rural neighborhood, that you keep it down to these small places that are, they fit in very easily with a rural neighborhood.
I'm not sure how much you can do for a large commercial item, like 80,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Or 40,000, I mean, the issue I have with that is, I think you're penalizing the residential lot owner by allowing an acre next to them to be commercial.
Well, I'm just presenting what the original
Okay.
idea was behind it, which was inadequately expressed in the zoning.
Okay,
It certainly was.
so I'll make a motion that,
Deb, before you do that,
Yeah.
can I just, I do want to flag for you what the implications are through the LD 2003 last year.
good, thank you.
Because there are a couple of things at play. So if you change the RN minimum lot size, what you've effectively done was change the calculation for the density calculation for affordable housing, and you've changed the minimum acreage for those extra dwelling units and ADUs. So it might be helpful to think about it through 3 scenarios. If somebody right now has a 2-acre lot, once LD 2003 goes into effect, they could build 1 residential dwelling plus an ADU. And that ADU could be attached or detached, and for all intents and purposes, you wouldn't be able to distinguish one from the other. It could be 2 houses, right? If you were to reduce the size to 1 acre, then that person could build 4 dwellings, essentially, 2 residences plus 2 ADUs by splitting the lot. So that's one scenario. Under the extra dwelling unit scenario, a person could just build, under the 2-acre scenario, they could just build 1 residential dwelling and they'd be maxed out. Under the 1-acre scenario, they could have 2 houses under the extra dwelling unit. And then for affordable housing, if you were to have an affordable housing development, I'm just gonna expand the theory a little bit here. Think about a 10-acre lot, right? So you have a 10-acre lot. If you have a minimum lot size of 2 acres, the normal maximum density on that lot would be 5 units, right? If an affordable housing project were to be proposed on that 10-acre lot, that would be, the maximum density would be 2.5 times 5. Okay, so that's the current status quo. If you were to reduce the lot size to minimum lot size in the RN to 1 acre, and if you had a 10-acre lot you could build 10 houses. And if you wanted to do affordable housing, you could build 25 houses. So that's the effect of LD 2003 on your decision to reduce lot size in the RN.
Which
Yep.
is 70% of our town, and that's sort of the intent of the law.
Right,
my
so, yeah, I definitely understand what you're saying. The question is, how realistic is it that somebody's gonna build, what'd we say, 24 individual houses? 25 on 10 acres? It might be
It will
a,
totally depend on your site plan review and or subdivision review, depending on the kind of affordable housing project it is, and their ability to build an engineered septic system.
right, so in the rural neighborhood, that might be tough.
Are these individual houses, or could they be condominiums?
Well, they could be condos, I mean, if I put my developer hat on, I'm guessing it would either be,
Duplexes or
it would be like an apartment building, which would come to us, or condos, which would come to us. It would be something along those lines. I suppose it could be, somebody could split up their lot and build a whole bunch of tiny homes, but,
That would still come to us.
I still am not too, I guess, I hear what you're saying, Aga, and I understand it, but I'm not sure in reality how big of a deal it is. What we could do is move on from this, and we won't vote today, and I can complete the work I'm doing on the rural neighborhood, which, what I've been doing is going through, and, some of it is estimating, obviously, but there's a huge number of subdivisions already built in the rural neighborhood or already approved that haven't been built on. Those are predefined. And my guess is we're really worried about, for something like Aga's talking about, are those 5-acre lots and that sort of thing, which aren't the majority. So we can wait, but the whole idea here was to try and correct that. We've certainly had input that people would like to see 1 acre.
But you know what we're talking about is social engineering in a way. And it would seem to me that if the state has imposed this, that our reaction should be to comply with the state requirement with as little change to the community as possible. Because we have already spoken of what we want 70% of our town to look like. And it would just be very destructive of the town. We don't know what developer would show up, but if one were to show up, the conditions would be to change 70% of our town in a rather drastic way.
Yeah, to counter that, I'll say, having looked at the lot sizes, made a histogram of them, looked at what some of the large lot sizes are, there would not be a change to 70% of the town. I think the driving change would be people would start splitting lots, and there will be some change, but, Ken, and then let's move to the next topic.
Yeah, I just wanted to say one thing. I think that we shouldn't be bound by the idea of that we speculate on what the voting would be like if we make any changes. For instance, in zoning, when the 75-foot setback was proposed, many people said, oh, the town won't accept that. But it was proposed and the town accepted it. So that I think it's a little premature to consider or to think about what we're doing in terms of what do we think the town would accept? I think we should think in terms of what is best for the town, and if the town doesn't accept it, that's one thing. But rather than trying to prejudge anything we.
Well, I'll just reword it. I think it's best for the town to go to 1
Absolutely.
acre because 70% of the land mass is that. And the bit of study I've done on the types of lots doesn't indicate to me there'd be harm. But I'm willing to table this question until after we have a draft, because it's going to be a separate question anyway.
Do we need a motion to table?
There was
No.
no motion.
It's the chairman's prerogative.
So,
Could I just make a suggestion, since it's 10 past 6?
right.
Could we just maybe go through the questions and ask, AGA questions as they pertain to LD 2003 and
Yes.
perhaps
And get-
make decisions at a later workshop?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think both of the things we've discussed today that have taken an hour and 5 minutes are beyond the scope of 2003.
Yes.
Of course, our attorney's on the clock.
Yeah, okay.
So let's keep going, please. So on the first page, item B, consider incorporating the July 1st limitations allowed by LD 2003. So, Aga, can you just explain your note there to us?
Yeah, let me just read through it here. I think all I was trying to explain there is that if somebody is, if you have a vacant lot situation, essentially LD 2003 only talks about the construction of additional dwelling units. So it's not a lot size issue. So, anytime you have a situation where smaller lots are created by virtue of, or not created, but small vacant lots result by virtue of the removal of a structure, you really go to your non-conforming lot section in chapter 2 to figure out what can and cannot be done on that property.
Okay. So, I think
So
that,
my only point was that the LD 2003 provision has nothing to do with lot size. It's just whether you want to sort of allow somebody to rebuild.
okay, so that's really, it's kind of, we can throw that question out
Yeah.
essentially.
Separate.
Okay.
It wouldn't be something we do. The number 2 item, I think what August's suggesting here is, the board had agreed that we would implement this, we would include this in the changes. Where a dwelling unit in existence after July 1, 2023 is torn down, this would be 2024, I think now, right? Empty lot results, that part. And August written in red there for more than 2 years. And then a note on the next page. So I'd suggest we move forward with her suggestion, which is more palatable than I think what we originally said, which is we would enact that provision of the law, but we're putting the 2-year time period on it, in 2-year window. So I know Tori brought up a concern about, what if the building needs to be destroyed and made into an affordable housing development, right? So this would still allow that. It wouldn't have you inappropriately doing it.
Mhm.
So are we good with including that in the ordinance?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a yes, Ida.
Aha.
All right. Accessory, item C, accessory dwelling unit. That's the definition we came up with. Legal says it's okay. We might want to clarify whether it's a footprint or floor area calculation. Can you just explain the difference there, Aga?
Yeah, so footprint is just the outer perimeter of a building. You can have multiple stories within a the same footprint. Floor area is actually living space. So you would double, if you had a 10 by 10 foot structure with 2 floors, it would be 200 square feet would be the floor area. 100 square feet would be the footprint.
I'd like to suggest footprint because that would maintain the proportional relationship that you wouldn't, you'd have a dwelling.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, I
Does that
agree.
make sense to the board?
Yep,
Okay, so we would make it footprint.
footprint.
And
40% of the size.
I think I'm gonna go home now.
Of the principal dwelling footprint.
right.
In
So,
both instances, so 190 square feet footprint
Or 40% of the footprint.
and 40% of footprint.
okay.
Aga, could this be seen as a bit prohibitive, say if there's a really small home, like a 1,100 square foot home, and then an ADU is only allowed to be 40% of that footprint, that's a very, very small ADU.
Well,
Yeah.
you got a restriction where it says 190 feet is the
Minimum.
That's the minimum.
minimum.
Right.
So they always have
Yeah,
190
whenever-
feet. So back to the
Whenever
10 by
you use a
10,
percentage, oh, sorry.
I'm just saying, back to the 10 by 10 example, that's 100 square feet, but that ADU could be 190 square feet, the way I would read this. Am I correct?
Well, that's the minimum.
Yeah.
That's the
Well,
minimum.
if it was an 1,100 square foot home and you take 40% of that, then could be 440 square feet would be the maximum it could be as an ADU.
Right.
It is an accessory dwelling unit. The whole intent of this, and other towns have done this, and I know this wasn't a favorite of the CEO, but other towns have done this. The intent, and Aga, maybe you have other ideas, the intent was to have some conformity and not have, as Dee has said, little mushrooms popping up all over town next to houses. You know, so you have a 4,000 square foot home and a little shed people are living out of or something like that. It was to try and give some conformity. That's probably the wrong word, but, and other towns have actually done this. Other towns have used the percentage along with square foot. So what are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
I think the percent, as a legal matter, it's fine. I think that, what can happen, is that it's easy to get around this any percentage-based limitation. And that is that it's, you can imagine the scenario, you have a single-family dwelling, let's say it's 1,000 square feet in size, and you wanna build an ADU that's 500 square feet in size. Well, under this rule, you can't. But you could go into the CEO's office and build an addition on your house that's an extra 200 square feet, and then you could get your 500 square foot ADU the next day.
Well, then they can
So-
do it.
It's sort of
can
like
afford it.
incentivizing building up a bigger home in some ways, but I don't know how many people will actually do that.
They won't do it.
I recognize what was said earlier, that it does tend to punish people who don't have big homes.
That's my opinion.
But it is, as a legal matter, it's fine. You can do it this way, or you can set a square footage amount if you prefer.
Well, we talked about setting 800 square feet, I think, because that was 40% of the average home that we knew about, I think in Cumberland County,
2,000 square feet.
Yeah, it might have been.
1,700 square feet.
Or about 2,000.
If I can find my
You're
calculator.
going back to floor area calculation?
I just think of too, if someone wanted to build
That would be floor
a
area.
garage and then an ADU above the garage, and that happened to be 50% of their home because they have a very small home, and then that's saying that the ADU above their garage is not permissible.
No, there's a minimum.
No, she's
If
talking
it, if
about
it goes
the maximum.
over. It's just it's a tricky situation for smaller
That's
homeowners.
That's why if you use footprint can be prohibitive or restrictive. Whereas if you're using floor area, a two-story home, it would be two-story home of 1,000 feet for each story is 2,000, would be 800 feet.
Well, remember that a person who builds an ADU, let's assume that this is a widow living in even a little house, can live in the smaller unit and rent out the bigger unit.
Or vice versa.
Right, so that you could still get a substantial amount of rent and income if you rent out your larger unit. And then if, on the other hand, if somebody were to build a addition on their home, is there a restriction on making that addition an apartment if it's attached to the house? I had thought that we were going to allow one ADU that was standalone and one that could be a part of a structure, which would give a person another opportunity to turn some of their existing residential space into rental space if it had the independent cooking and all the other things that make it a residence.
That's not what we actually agreed to in
Okay,
writing here.
then I'll go
What we
back.
said is,
All right.
we said, one accessory dwelling unit is allowed on a single
I
lot
read that.
along with the existing principal dwelling unit and may be attached or detached. Now, they might expand their house and rent out part of it and, I mean, but
That would be
again,
their one shot.
remember, they have to have the septic, they have to have kitchen facilities, they have to have all of that. So, I guess the question is, does it make sense to say, to change the definition to be something like 190 square feet to 800 square feet?
Well, I'm coming back and saying
It
it should
should
be
be
floor
smaller.
area calculation,
But,
not footprint.
okay, so let's take one at a time. Do we want to drop the percentage or not? If somebody has a 5,000 square foot house, and I'm not saying there's a lot of them in Bridgton, but they will be limited to 800 square feet, which maybe isn't the end of the world. It could be detached.
I think that's fine. I think that what we want not all these little mushrooms, and that we want on a lot a ratio, a relationship of the primary structure and a smaller structure. I think it's more pleasing if you
So
if you do
800,
that.
you'd be okay not using a percentage and going to 800 square feet max?
I've looked at it both ways.
See,
Believe
you
me,
gotta be
it's
able
been
to
around, ADUs have been around for 25 years.
Is it
At
800
least.
or is it a percentage? That's the question on the debate.
Here's, Ken, and then I have a suggestion for move on. Ken?
Yeah, I just have a clarification. Dee mentioned something, and I thought maybe Aga knows that LD 2003 did permit or actually legislate that you could have an attached ADU plus a detached ADU. What happened to that?
It's not in there. I don't think.
It was at one time.
It says accessory dwelling unit is allowed on a single lot with the existing principal dwelling unit and may be attached or detached.
I remember
That's one.
being presented.
That's one.
That's what we just wrote.
It's one or the other, the way this, what Aga's written and read here, that's the way I'm Aga,
Well-
can you help us?
I've seen them
I'm not
both.
sure I understand the question. What, is the question whether you
Ken-
can have two ADUs
Yeah,
relative?
Ken's, yes. The question is, can you have two? Because even though we say one, which, we're limiting it to one, detached or attached. Ken's believing that the law says you can have at least two because one can be attached.
I don't think so. I think if you look at that section as a whole, it uses the word one in a number of places. So it's, I think it's limited to one ADU
Yeah,
per
so,
dwelling unit.
yeah, so the chart that
Now,
came
you
out.
guys can change that, it would not be a problem if you wanted
Yeah,
to allow
yeah,
two.
I don't want to, but,
Not two separate
If
ones.
it's in a density area, then.
yeah. My question, Aga, was that some months back, we were given a little chart that showed houses on lots, and one of them said that ADUs in residential areas, it could be one attached and one detached. And I didn't bring that with me, but that was on the chart.
It
What about
was.
this thing here?
But it,
Not on that chart.
but that's a may be this or that, and we only have to require, we have to require at least one, which may be attached or detached, which
Okay.
means we make the decision.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to make sure, that the law did not require that we have two, but
No, it does not.
good.
So I have a suggestion that we're gonna have to have a definition for accessory dwelling unit. We put in here that it's subordinate and incidental. I have a suggestion that we keep the percent, but move it to 50%, which is more palatable, and let the public at a hearing or reviewing this react to it.
50% footprint or floor.
Based on the
We
footprint?
said footprint originally, because then it would be,
Footprint's easier for the.
yeah, so we'll stick with footprint, Aga, we'll change that to 50%. I'd also encourage the board, I think we included in the OneDrive, it might not be in today's folder, but in the prior folder, definitions from other towns of accessory dwelling unit, and some of those included percentages. And ours is not that much different than some of them, so I'd encourage you to look at that, so we have a fallback depending on what the public says. Okay?
May I ask, since you looked at it, what the percentages were? What was the range?
I can't remember, but they varied. In some, I think it varied, but that's in the OneDrive in the prior workshops folders, those examples.
So 50% is not,
50% is not outlandish.
okay.
Moving on to D.
So we decided on
We just discussed that.
We just decided.
that. Okay, good.
And on D, distributed and being true requirement down, per lot, clearly. Usually I recommend allowing 180 per principal dwelling unit. Okay, so on D, Aga has a recommendation, because we really want one ADU in addition to the principal dwelling, not saying one ADU per lot, but one ADU per principal dwelling unit.
Yeah.
Does everybody agree with
Okay.
that?
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay. So Aga, if we could incorporate that change?
Mhm.
You said 45%, 50% is too much.
I thought so.
I think we had a
I
consensus
think
on
so.
this one.
I think on
Motivate
D,
that.
we had a consensus that we would
Fine.
allow affordable housing in all.
Yeah.
Well, in order for us to remove it from a district, we have to remove housing from that district, which would
Yes.
mean we'd have to remove dwelling units from a district. Now, we don't want to do that.
No, I
Okay.
think they should be in all districts.
Okay, so,
That's
if you want,
unusually
we need to change this one. So Aga, we're okay with just leaving what we have in the use table for dwelling units? Now we're on to
Are
E.
you, I think most communities are defining affordable housing and then adding it to their use table. Is that what you're contemplating?
Yeah, yeah, we could, I mean, do we need to do that? If we're gonna, I guess if we're gonna have a separate section on affordable housing, we probably should put it in the use table, and it would go with a definition then in the back. I mean, we probably
Who
don't,
does the review?
we would.
I think that
We
would
will,
provide
I
some
know we
clarity.
would, but to clarify it.
But I'm also wondering if we need to do it, because right now we allow multifamily dwellings in every district. So,
Yeah, so multifamily dwellings are defined. Let's just take a look at that for a second. A building consisting of 3 or more attached dwelling units. So there is some ambiguity in the LD 2003 definition, because it's not clear to me, at least, that affordable housing has to all be in a single building.
yeah,
So you could have affordable housing, single-family residences in a subdivision composed of affordable housing. You could have duplexes, or you could have an
Right.
apartment complex.
right.
So I
But
don't
would
think
we-
multifamily dwelling necessarily captures affordable housing.
Right, but if we left, since we have multifamily, duplex, or whatever it says, two-family and single-family, and of course we have subdivision law, do we have to call out affordable housing as long as we have a section that describes what that is? Where I'm going here is not putting that use on the table.
Yeah, I don't think you have to, you just wanna make sure that those categories of dwelling units are allowed everywhere. So I think what you will have to do is change the no's in the DVB one to S's and P's.
Say that again, Aga? What you'll have to change?
In the DVB one, let me think through this, because this is the ground story versus upper story issue. Now, I think we're okay here. I had originally been concerned that, the prohibition on dwellings on the ground story in the DVB one would be problematic. But I think we can justify that.
Okay. So again, I know, Ken, you told me not to do this, but
Go ahead.
my concern is if we want this to pass and we put affordable housing on the use table, that it might not pass.
It won't, because people don't know what affordable housing is. They think it's public housing.
That's
exactly what.
Yeah, but if we have a separate section, as you've suggested, Dee, that classifies it, with whatever, essentially you're saying you have extra standards for it over other types of housing, then, we're covered there. And we get into the whole discussion of, eliminating housing from, I don't think we want to go there.
No.
I think we want to
No.
leave housing in all districts, and affordable housing can be in all districts,
Yes.
and they have to meet the standards as
So you're
defined
gonna
by
have
the
to
law.
change one thing on the table.
Not going to change anything.
No, because the whole idea is to have multi-use, have
Yeah.
housing even
Well,
in the
there's one section
downtown.
where it says multifamily is not allowed.
That's on the ground, no dwelling units are not allowed in the downtown business district. Any kind of dwelling unit is not allowed in the downtown, on the first floor.
Okay.
That's what that is, and I think what legal's telling us is, we don't need to add affordable housing, and we can still maintain that exclusion that we have, which had a very specific reason, without running into snafus.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay?
All right.
Okay. On to E, the separate affordable housing section. Everybody still okay with this? Which was Ms. Miller's suggestion. Yeah, it could be in the site plan review.
Housing and site plan review, wouldn't it be? Subdivision, I wondered about that, because site plan review has never really dealt with housing unless it was a commercial like an apartment building.
Well, it could be. Aga, could you comment on that?
Yeah, this is actually changed to the state law, where we had situation, developers petitioned for change to the state law, to the state subdivision law, because they were being subjected to 2 levels of review for apartments, essentially. So if you were doing a multifamily complex, you'd have to go through subdivision review and site plan review. So a few years back, the legislature added a provision to the subdivision statute that basically said you don't have to require developers to go through both. If they go through subdivision review, that should be adequate. If they go through site plan review, that should be adequate. The municipality can decide which one it is. So in the applicability section of your site plan review chapter, I think we have built that in.
We have.
Trying to remember where exactly
It is in
but-
there, though.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's
so-
the way we've been treating it. It's either there or in section 1, but I think it's in, might be in the section 1.
It's in the subdivision chapter, it's
Yeah.
in section 6-2F, beginning July 1, 2018. A division of a new or an existing structure into 3 or more dwelling units is subject to site plan review.
Yeah, that would be a single structure, and that makes sense.
Yes.
A single structure, yeah, exactly. So
And if there's-
if it's a single structure and you're creating units within that structure, you don't go through subdivision review, you go through site plan review.
And if, so Ken, you had a question?
Yeah, Aga, when you were talking about this, you used the verbs should as opposed to must. And as a consequence, does that mean that it's up to the town whether it wants to use both subdivision regulations and site plan regulations for?
Let me just check the language here, I think it's a must now.
Yeah, I think, Ken, I think the way it's written, and this is the way we're handling it, is if it's in a single structure and it's more than 3, it's 3 dwelling units or more, it must go through site plan review.
But, no, my question is that she was trying to separate it didn't have to go through both site plan and
It
subdivision.
could
Correct.
be- Right.
And she was using should as opposed to must,
It
be
just,
one or the other.
we've just been going through site plan, so,
Yeah, the way the law is structured is, this is now an exemption to subdivision law. So in other words, you have to go through subdivision review unless an ordinance has adopted the provision that you have in section 6-2F.
Yeah, it's very, very hard to take a building and subdivide it into several apartments and live up to the subdivision requirements of lot size and all that other stuff which would come into play. And that's happened a couple of times, I think before any of you were on the board. Most notably, when Wales and Hamlin put in some loft apartments, and we were trying to squeeze that into subdivision, which is really insane. So I think that's a very good suggestion in dealing with single buildings, which are commercial in nature and would fit for site plan review anyway.
right.
Okay.
I agree. So my other question to Aga is, if somebody comes with an affordable housing development that's in essence a subdivision, it's 3 individual units or more, should we add an affordable housing section to subdivision, or what's the best way to do this that's easy for us but not too complicated to, not too repetitive?
The easiest way to do it would be to cross-reference the site plan review chapter or section. So if you add a section to site plan review, you can cross-reference it in your subdivision regs.
I like that.
Okay,
Okay, is everybody okay with that?
right.
Yeah, because an actual subdivision is going to deal with things like roads and, all kinds of things that are not pertinent at all.
Okay, so we're good there, and then, I guess the question is, what should be included in the affordable housing section? My first thought is just what the state requirements are. And then we can look at that if we think we need something else that's logical to add. Aga, what
Are you on L?
That's what I'm
Yes.
seeing,
oh, no.
communities do, yeah.
Okay, so we would just incorporate
No, E.
what the law has put in
Ken, we don't
the
have
section
page. We
on,
don't have the page.
on affordable housing. So
Yeah,
the,
you know, what you decide to
Oh,
do with the
that's not-
density, with the minimum lot size and the RN will kind of implicate this section, because I think you wanna generally try to avoid treating affordable housing subdivisions and the calculation for density
Oh, I see
differently
what
from
happened.
affordable housing, single units, single structures that go through site plan review.
I
Okay.
So, you know, just give that some thought, because how you calculate the density bonus will depend on whether it's a subdivision or whether it's site
so
plan.
how would you do
Yeah,
that?
different lot sizes for those two things.
So if I'm understanding you correct, you're suggesting we want to build it so that the density requirements, if it comes under site plan, are the same as the density requirements as if it comes under subdivision?
That would be, I think that would be preferable from just a clarity
to me.
perspective. You may have reasons to have them different, and if you reach that result, that's fine. Just make it a conscious decision, because you know, Bridgton's code is a little differently situated than other codes, where you have different minimum lot size requirements depending on if you're in a subdivision or out of a subdivision.
Right.
And so that'll affect the density calculation for affordable housing.
Okay, so is everybody okay with letting Aga structure this so that there's equivalence there?
Sure.
Okay. I guess the second question, a follow-through to that is it might be easier if we made, well, that's a whole different discussion, but to think about making subdivision lot sizes match the land use code, which means it'd
That would
be 2
be the
acres.
best solution.
That is the best solution, and it means you would, whatever the lot size is in each district is the lot size
Size
that's
for each.
required.
That makes all the sense in the world.
Well, we can do that. If this board has consensus, we can do that by changing subdivision, which requires a public hearing only.
And vote of us.
Right, and we can, and in addition, we can say if you want to go to smaller than that, you need to have the infrastructure road. And I think that would solve a lot of problems,
Yes,
I think.
that would be good.
Okay, so Aga, I think we can handle changing that in subdivision ourselves,
Yeah,
but, so what we're looking at, but just so you know, when you're building this, we would make subdivision lot sizes match the district, and then, for all the districts, and then we would, there would still be the exceptions about going down to 5,000 square feet if, you know, you have
Common water.
the common well and all of that. It would just, lot sizes would follow the district lot sizes. And then we would still allow an applicant to go, or a development to go down to 1 acre if they have an internal road. So we'll take a stab at writing that, and then we'll let you pick it apart.
okay. Yeah, it would be good for me to have that draft language before we build.
Okay,
build out
I
the
think
2000
we
language.
can do that pretty quickly. So,
Okay.
Because we
And
have
we
the
should,
standard.
if you're gonna go in that direction, there's probably, I'm remembering that there's something in chapter 3 that we'll have to strike.
there's something in
Maybe.
chapter 3 that says
Yeah,
you don't follow the
Excellent.
dimensional
Exceptional
standards
subdivision.
except for, you don't follow dimensional standards of frontage and lot size for subdivisions, but you follow all the rest.
Yeah, I think that's right, footnote 16.
Yeah,
So
so
we'll
that
have
would,
to.
that would disappear.
revisit that.
Okay. All right, we're on to F, consider maximum impervious coverage spec for some districts.
Angie, you don't, it's right here.
Maximum lot coverage is in, 3 districts now. Mixed use, 50%, lakeside neighborhood, 30%. Rural neighborhood, 30%. Kathy, maybe you want to explain the chart you did, just so,
Chart I did.
bring everybody up to date, and so legal knows what you did.
Okay. Because at the time we were talking about reducing. I got it, thank you. The rural neighborhood lot size from about 80,000 square feet, which it currently is, to somewhere between an acre or 40,000 square feet. I put together some hypothetical lots, both current square footage and proposed square footage, put in all the setbacks and calculated how much buildable area they would be. And of course, it changes depending on the configuration of the lot, but there are some optimal ones. If you've got just the bare minimum of frontage, which is 100 feet linear, your first lot would be 800, it'd be a little skipaghetti lot of 800 feet by 100 feet. And only 44% of the lot, or 35,000 square feet, would be buildable from a lot staying within the setback percentage. You change that to a lot that is 200 square feet by 400 square feet, same square footage, but you get 56% of the lot that is now buildable because you've got a much larger interior area of the lot. And so playing with that would get you some information. When you get down to about 40,000 square feet, when you have those kinds of setbacks on a much smaller lot, it does tend to give you a pretty small buildable area. For a 100 square foot by 400 square foot lot, about the acre, you only have 15,000 square feet that's actually buildable. It's only 38% of the lot. And even if you optimize at maybe 150 square feet by 267 square feet for your lot, you get at best 42% of the lot that's buildable, or 16,000 square feet. So in terms of, it would make a huge difference in yes, you'd get a lot more houses, but in terms of trying to site your house on your lot, you're gonna have a tricky time with it.
And you also the lot itself could be restricted by net buildable area or.
Yes, and I mean, and that doesn't even take into account if you've got
Wetlands
wetlands or
or-
something else on the lot, then that throws you in a whole different area.
And it does argue that 150 square foot frontage is best if you're gonna have an acre.
That gives you the best buildable area
Yes.
on that lot, at that
Because a
size.
rectangular lot is much more buildable than a
Spaghetti lot.
spaghetti lot.
Right.
Yes.
And
Right.
don't we have restrictions for
Well,
spaghetti
if
lots?
it's in the shoreline
If
zone.
it's in
Well,
shoreline.
but
We
we
could do
don't,
it, yeah, I mean, but.
we don't normally allow that in any subdivision.
It is allowable if it's on the
Yes,
shoreline.
we do, if it's 100 square, if it's got 100 feet
100
frontage.
feet of frontage, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
um,
And, you know, absent a absolute requirement, I think builders are gonna try to configure lots to
Right.
get as many as they can in a particular
Well-
space.
Well, we've had that happen already.
Mhm.
And the actual physical lot is a matter of fact. I mean, it's there on the face of the earth. So it would seem to me that what we learn is, from this, is that you just have to look at almost obviously, every
Yeah.
individual thing.
so, I'd suggest that we don't change any of the lot coverage specs and leave it as it is. There's already 30% in the rural neighborhoods, so Again, that's why I don't have a problem going to 1 acre, because
Yep.
you're, it's gonna be
And
tough.
the definition of lot coverage does include impervious surfaces
Yep.
on the lots. It's not just the building footprint.
Right.
It's
Right.
really Your
Driveways,
driveways.
gravel, so forth. Okay, so,
Yep, I
no
can do,
change there.
I can do similar calculations for some of the other neighborhoods or in other zoning areas, anything that anybody has a particular concern about.
I think the only ones that would make sense is outer corridor, which is
Okay.
probably where you don't want it all going to. And that's 80,000 square foot. But we'll leave that, not necessarily for this, for another time,
Okay.
okay? So we won't implement a new maximum impervious coverage, implement parking requirements.
I leave parking requirements alone right now.
Yep.
Yes.
Everybody okay with leaving parking requirements
Much as I'd like
alone?
to see them done, I
Yeah.
think that being politically expedient, we would be,
I think that's a November change. We do need to do something in some districts.
So,
8,
no to G? Was that a no to?
that's a no
changes?
to G
Right.
Okay. got
for
it.
now.
Gee.
It might come back in November.
I think it will come up.
H, assure water quantity quality. AGA is recommending we
an H.
take what the law
Well, they didn't-
requires and put it in the building regulations?
Left out a page.
Yeah, it's in the, it's only on this drive.
Yeah, it's not on this. Oh, no?
I think the print copies are missing a page.
Yeah, don't,
Yes, they
are.
yeah. I can read in 2 modes. I know how to do that.
The reason I'm suggesting that is because you're gonna have a lot of, ADUs and extra dwellings that do not trigger site plan review, that do not trigger subdivision review. So the only place where you catch all of those units is in the building regs. Now, you can also require maybe some prima facie evidence of water supply, adequate water supply. I think you have a standard for that anyway.
Yeah.
Already in your subdivision and site plan review rules. So I think the simplest way of addressing that LD 2003 requirement is to put it in chapter 7.
Everybody good with that?
Yes.
All right?
Yep.
It's a sale.
Okay.
Now we're on to I. Assure additional dwelling unit allowance incorporates the requirement, frontage requirement is per dwelling unit.
Okay, that's good.
I like that.
Yeah, and you already have that in place, so I don't think you need to make any changes.
Okay.
Yep. What? Okay, but what we can't do is we can't, if they put a detached ADU, I think you said earlier that would be excluded from this requirement to have the extra, have it, have an additional 100 feet. Is that a case? Is that, or whatever the
No.
frontage is?
No, there is some ambiguity in the law, but I think a strict interpretation and the interpretation that DECD has given is that frontage can be doubled for ADUs if you want it to be. We have to exempt ADUs from minimum lot size. But I think we can require them to comply with frontage if you want them to. So, and that's up to you how you want to treat them. There's just no concern about being more permissive. It's just a concern about being more restrictive.
Can we be more permissive in certain districts?
What was that?
Can we be more permissive in certain districts?
Yes, yeah, I think that's fine.
That's more complicated.
I understand it's more complicated.
What are you thinking, Rolf?
Well, I'm thinking, in a sense, if you got 100-foot frontage requirements for a dwelling unit, in some of the districts, it's just, you're not gonna be able to put an ADU in. That's true. That's my issue.
So-
And that goes against what we're trying to do. In a
Right.
sense, if I wanna put ADUs in the village district, or down here, or your neighborhood,
Right, yeah, when I was looking at the downtown village neighborhood, 40% of the lots in that downtown village neighborhood are non-conforming. They don't meet our minimum lot size. So that's like almost half our district.
But you would allow, I think the law says we have to allow an ADU regardless of lot size, but did you have a sense for frontage? I don't know if we had that data.
But
No.
if you're converting a garage, let's say, you're
Well, that
not
would-
going to have that ADU slash garage that already exists isn't going to have an additional 100 feet of frontage. It would obviously be close to the primary structure.
exactly
So,
what I'm talking about.
yeah, so I'm thinking, well, maybe you could do a percentage and you could just say, no less than 75% of the 100, or 75 feet or something for an ADU.
Aga. Has any other communities addressed this in a different way?
Yeah, I have, and it's sort of all over the board. The ones that I've worked with, all of them have essentially exempted ADUs from frontage requirements in their village areas because it's impossible to meet. But it comes down to, like, you know, you don't have to do it, but if you want to accommodate that use in your smaller, in your more densely developed areas of town, then you probably should exempt them from frontage. And just treat them like you would treat essentially construction of a shed or a
Right.
garage,
I
as
think
opposed
so.
to a second dwelling.
So if you're gonna do it for the denser districts, it would be DVB one's covered. You know, you can only have something on the second story in the same building, so you don't actually need to worry about it there, I don't think.
But I would say, you know, even if we're in the rural neighborhood, I'm gonna go back to the rural neighborhood. You know, if there's a house and they have a detached garage, you know, above the garage is the perfect spot for an ADU.
But isn't that already a non-conforming structure in that case? Because the garage is there and you're just converting the upstairs, so you don't have to worry about it or not? Not worry about it, but.
You will have to run it through the non-conforming use chapter to see if it's allowed, and sometimes it can be, sometimes it can't be. I've actually advised clients to make it clear in their non-conforming chapter that ADUs are allowed on non-conforming lots and within non-conforming structure without creating a more non-conforming situation. Because otherwise, I think you have this odd, kind of perverse incentive where you are actually disincentivizing high-density growth in your village and incentivizing it in your rural areas.
Yeah, I think, I see everybody nodding their head.
Let's do that,
So
yeah.
I think that makes sense to add.
Plus, what we're forgetting is, with our curved roads and hills and such, you don't have lots. You can have substantial lot size and very limited frontage. Homes on cul-de-sacs, for instance. So, I think, and they widen out, and you could put one somewhere else on your house, on your lot, regardless of how much frontage you have. I think the whole concept of an ADU is that it's accessory, and therefore, I think we should be as permissive as possible.
Okay, so Aga will include what she's done with other clients, include something in the nonconformance section that allows it as long as it's you know, so your example of the garage, it would be allowed as long as it's not more non-conforming, as long as they don't build it in the direction that they should.
Right.
But if it's above the garage, it wouldn't be an issue, unless,
Or
So
if
why
you're
would we
building
also-
something, you shouldn't intrude into the side setbacks.
Why would we require frontage, why would we require frontage at all for an ADU?
That's a good question.
It's a great question.
Yeah, why would we?
I mean,
if
that
you're only
fit-
gonna allow one on a lot, maybe it makes sense
What
not
if it's
to.
out back or behind? Or
Right,
out,
well,
yeah.
then it's setbacks. If we're only allowing one,
I don't think it matters.
then it probably doesn't matter,
I agree.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree with
I
Rob.
agree.
Yeah.
okay? Okay, so, another decision. We're good.
Okay, so what, let me just repeat this back to you so that I am understanding. So I'll change chapter 2 to make sure that ADUs are not treated as creating a more non-conforming situation. And did I hear correctly that you want to allow ADUs
All
in
districts.
all of the zones without requiring the
Frontage.
doubling
Yep.
of dimensional
Right.
standards?
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Correct.
that's an easy fix. I'll change subsection C2 of your chapter 3,
Yeah.
section 3, the dimensional standards to add that.
Okay.
But this just deals with frontage, the
Yes.
side setbacks and back setbacks.
Those all have to be
are all
Those
the
all-
same.
Yeah.
Okay. Terrific. We are on
Jay,
J, thank you, Ken. So, Aga, have you had the, so we wanted to be able to discriminate ADUs from dwelling unit allowances so people don't double dip by accident or on purpose. And you see Aga's suggestion here. There needs to be some rules. Have you done this with other municipalities? Had the rules?
No, I haven't, and it's, I think it's gonna be a bit of a problem. One thing that has changed since I think since I drafted up these answers is, how DECD's rulemaking dealt with this issue. And just give me 1 second, I'm trying to find it.
I had thought the,
Final rule, they included a provision that basically said that you can't double dip.
so,
I think what communities are sort of resorting to is, and just, I'm only talking about the ones that I've been working with, is that if somebody comes in and proposes an ADU and gets approved for an ADU, then they can no longer after that build any extra dwelling units under that allowance. But it's kind of, it's kind of an odd posture to take because, it's not at all clear what distinguishes the two, except perhaps in situations where an ADU, where an extra dwelling unit is bigger than an ADU, and so it exceeds your maximum size. Otherwise, there's really no distinction between the two. We could have the CEO make the classification as part of the certificate of occupancy or the building regulations for that purpose. Or you can simply let people kind of manipulate the code to maximize their development potential, depending on the nature of, depending on what's happening in a particular law. So, they could come in and get permission for an ADU, but if it also meets the definition for extra dwelling, then, that's fine, and then they could come back a few years later and get an ADU.
Yeah,
At some point, I guess the question that I would encourage you to toss around is, what is it that you're trying to prohibit? So, under current rules, setting aside LD 2003, you already allow multiple dwellings on a single lot. That's never been an issue. So if somebody has a 10-acre lot, they could build theoretically 10 dwellings incrementally over time without triggering subdivision review. And that would be allowed under your rules. So this is more of a question of like, at what point would you want to prohibit that? And can you reasonably distinguish an ADU from an extra dwelling unit from just a second dwelling unit? In my mind, there's really no difference. The ADU has special permissions, but there's no difference between an extra dwelling unit and what you would allow as a second detached, single-family home on a lot.
well, other than we do say, we're saying one ADU per dwelling unit, and we say an ADU is, subservient's the wrong word, incidental and subordinate. So
Yeah.
isn't that the discriminator?
That is the discriminator, but that discriminator does not exist with respect to extra dwelling units. So, before LD2, let's set aside the ADUs for a moment. Before LD 2003, somebody could come in and build, 2 dwellings on a lot if they met dimensional requirements. After LD 2003, they can still build 2 dwelling units if they meet dimensional requirements. There's no difference there at all to Bridgton. So I think you're going to have a very difficult time discerning what is a principal dwelling unit versus an extra dwelling unit versus like just a second dwelling on the lot, regardless of LD 2003. And I do think you can distinguish ADUs.
So if somebody wanted to put 2 ADUs on a lot, which are subordinate and they fall into a certain footprint, then the answer is no. But if their lot size is big enough and they have the frontage, then they could have a second dwelling unit, which would have to be, by definition, couldn't be subordinate or incidental, and somebody would have to make that decision, but it could be, say, 1,000 square feet and the main home is 1,500 square feet. And, okay,
I would make it even simpler. I think you could have a situation where somebody says, I want another house on my lot. And my first house is 1,000 square feet, and I want the second house to be 500 square feet. I'm just making up these numbers. And you guys can label it an ADU, but that person is not going to care. And if the person did care, they could label it an extra dwelling unit and it would still meet your definitions and comply.
Yes.
But for the dimensional restrictions. So I think it's, the double dipping concept is really complicated by the fact that there's no clear way by which a person can distinguish a principal dwelling from a second dwelling, other than the fact that it was built second.
What about number of bedrooms? The way we deal with
that starts to
septic
get
systems.
complicated.
Well,
You gotta have a 1-bedroom, 190 square foot house, that's the law.
right, but you're not gonna build an actual home with 1 bedroom, wouldn't you? If you're building a home that you were expecting.
Oh, you could
If you build a tiny
Well,
home.
Well, that's what, you can do anything.
Dee, there's tiny homes that just have 1 bedroom.
Yeah.
all
Look at
over the
Willow.
place.
Right, but a
cottages.
tiny home, it has a different definition.
Now we're, I think, I understand what you're saying, but I think that's adding a tiny home section to the code is,
I'm not saying to do that, but it does have a different definition.
right.
And
But so what do you,
if-
what are
Well,
you
what I'm
suggesting?
saying, if I have a lot that is, of course, I don't know if it would work, because I don't know if it would be affordable. Does every dwelling that is built with this allowance have to be an affordable? meet the-
No.
No.
All right,
No.
so let's say I have a lot of 4 acres, and I want to build a guest house so that my son from Alabama can come and stay for the whole summer. That's a second house.
It could be if it's more than 800 square feet.
Right, and so, I can see lots of people
Well,
wanting
I'm
to
just
do
saying
that.
It could be less than that.
I don't think this is an issue.
I don't think
So I
it is
think
I
the
either.
don't
question on the table though is, let's use that scenario, because that's a really good one. Let's say you build that guest house, and then you also want to build one more house. And let's just forget subdivision for a minute. You build that, you want to build that third tiny home, you know, let's say it's an ADU, you want to attach it to your principal dwelling.
Well, I was
Do you
gonna,
want to prohibit that
Do
scenario?
we what?
Want to prohibit that.
I don't know why you.
Because I read section J as your question of like, what do we want to, at what point do we decide that the allowances under LD 2003 have been used up?
Right.
And what I'm suggesting to you is that maybe instead of thinking about it through the lens of 2003, just think about it like, at what point do you want to say no to additional development?
4 units?
Because right now, your code doesn't say no to additional dwellings.
Attached or detached.
You know,
I was
if you have a
thinking-
big enough lot,
Ken had his
over
hand up.
time, you could build your guest house, you can build an extra dwelling, detached or attached, you can then build more than that, than what LD 2003 allows. So in some ways for Bridgton, this no double dipping rule is actually a limitation on development that currently does not exist.
Okay, Ken, you had your hand up.
It would seem to me that, that everything is self-limiting. For instance, if they're going to build an ADU, then they don't have to increase the frontage. If they're going to build a house that is a detached, separate dwelling unit, then they have to increase the frontage. So they're limited. If
Yeah,
they-
because you can't have 2 ADUs.
Yes,
So-
and so as a consequence, I don't see the problem.
So should we
There is
just
no
skip this completely? We're not gonna do it?
Yeah.
And if we run into a problem, then
we
we
come back
start
and address
limiting
it.
how many
agree.
homes, because once it gets to 3, it goes to subdivision.
Right, so then they have
So-
to
Right.
adhere to those
I was
laws.
thinking that we could say that any dwelling, any structure over 2 structures would have to be attached.
I think the board doesn't sound like they want to do that, Dee. I mean,
No,
I don't want to presuppose, but,
you're
Revisit
correct
it.
from my opinion.
okay. I think we just want to not have that, and, you know, if we run into an issue, as Ken said, some of this is self-limiting, then I think at that time we correct it.
That's good.
Yeah, that
Let's
sounds
get
good.
used to it. The law is designed to create more housing in this community, and it's gonna do it.
Right. Okay, we're on to K. The answer is yes, so, and we just talked about it, so we can move to L.
I'm going to the bathroom. I'm moving.
Determine if an ADU.
So we are on determine if an ADU may be allowed in relation to a duplex or triplex on a single lot.
So is that saying if like they own the condo, they could not put an,
No,
addition-
I'm saying, it's not a requirement of the law, so it could be allowed. So if you don't want it, you need to say so. But that's a tough one because it's a single building.
Yeah.
I would say right away, no.
Okay, so right away, no what? Don't,
No ADUs on a duplex or a triplex, or further, duplex or any multiple housing.
how's the rest of the board feel? I don't actually have a problem with Ken's suggestion, it's just, because I'm thinking, why would you do it if there's a
Yeah.
duplex, you'd build
Yeah,
another duplex.
The builder would just simply add something to the multiple house when they were
Right, but
building
if
it.
there's a condos and somebody owns the condo and they wanna come in and put an attachment on their condo, that's gonna cause an issue with the other.
Well, if
Condo.
it's
I
a
doubt that's
duplex,
allowed
you add to it, isn't
in a
that three,
condo.
so it has to be subdivision?
Yeah, I mean, and I think in condos, you can't do that anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure there's a situation where it,
Yeah, I don't think that would be a problem in a condo, because that's usually an association,
Yeah.
but I think of the older homes that are converted into a duplex, and that's often one building on a lot, and I personally don't see why we wouldn't allow an ADU to go on a lot like that, because
Right.
it appears to be a single-family home, but often those older homes are a duplex.
so do we need to
Or threeplexes. that we don't
Right.
allow.
Or a
spell it
triplex
out
or a
that way?
quadplex.
I just don't know why you would limit it.
I think we just, yeah.
for fire.
So is this one that we don't limit and we see how it works out?
I agree.
Okay,
Yeah.
So to not limit it, you need to change your definition of ADU.
To not limit it?
Yeah, so you would wanna add, a self-contained dwelling unit located within, attached to, or detached from a single-family dwelling, a two-family dwelling, or a multi-family dwelling.
Are we okay with that?
Yeah, not completely okay with new structures, new duplexes and new triplexes. I can understand a present structure that has been sort of divided inside into one or two apartments. Allowing an ADU for that, for an existing structure, but once something is built after a certain time and then say, oh, we can add another one here and another one there.
What's the rest of the board think?
Would revisit it.
We can leave it the way it is, which would imply that you couldn't do it. Because it says single-family home in the
Right.
definition.
No, I think one.
You could say
plays out.
single-family structure, which I think is where Ken is going.
Mhm.
Or, that's the wrong word, but you could say a single structure, which could be a duplex or a triplex.
Yeah, I think we probably wanna use the current definitions that you have for dwellings.
Yeah,
For what?
Single-family, two-family, or multi-family dwelling.
If we add it.
Yeah, she's saying to keep the same language if we were to do it.
Just, one thing that we do need to change is your definition of single-family dwelling. Because you have the in-law apartment language in there.
Yeah.
Do we have a definition for in-law apartments?
yes.
yeah, there's one, yes. I'm not going to go to it because then I'll screw up.
Yeah, so do
what I
we,
would suggest is that you essentially get rid of your in-law department definition.
Yeah.
In-law apartment definition throughout and just their ADUs.
right,
Right,
Even if they're in the structure?
yeah.
yeah, and dwelling single-family would say just containing one single-family, one dwelling unit,
Yeah, dwelling units, that's.
because the in-law apartment's an ADU. Okay, that makes sense. So do we want to,
But wait a minute, you said that an ADU is a separate dwelling, can't be attached.
no, we didn't
No,
say
no,
that.
I
We
didn't say that.
Oh.
didn't say that, we
Oh,
said it
you
could
said
be
attached
either
or
or.
separate.
Either or.
Exactly, I'm sorry.
Okay, so, just, that, I'm okay with changing it the way August suggests, which would allow an accessory dwelling unit, and again, addressing it if it becomes an issue. I mean, Ken is making a good point, though. Which is, would you allow ADUs with duplexes and triplexes if there's multiple, let people start building multiple buildings. I'm just not sure.
Keep in mind that usually for for duplexes or multifamily dwellings, you're gonna go through site plan review for those, or subdivision review. And, in all likelihood, those folks will have deed restrictions and covenants on their properties that
Right,
prohibit them from
I
doing this
I
anyway.
agree. You get
So I
the
don't
three,
think you add much by adding those.
okay.
And a separate ADU would have to have its own septic and water, wouldn't it?
Oh,
It depends on how they tie it in.
Yeah,
Okay,
depends
so,
if they have a large enough septic
so
system.
I think on L, I sense consensus, that we're okay if an ADU is paired with a duplex or a triplex.
I'm not.
Ken's not. Is anybody else opposed?
Yeah, I'm opposed.
Okay, do we want to vote on it?
Why bother? I mean, we have 5
Well, I don't
people
know.
and 2 people,
Um,
3 and 2 make 5.
Angie?
What?
Are you opposed to allowing ADUs with a duplex or triplex? No. No? Ralph?
No,
And I'm not. So I think, Kathy, I'd just like to know what you think,
Um,
even though you're not a voting member tonight.
Right, I just sort of think that the ADU thing, in terms of a duplex or a triplex, would be sort of, depending on how it was set up, it might be awkward,
Yeah,
very awkward.
Mm-hmm.
Because you have immediate neighbors to be concerned with, unless all the neighbors are together adding ADUs. It just sort of seems weird.
okay. So I think right now we leave it. We
Good
have,
we need to address it.
we need to address it, we
I think we're gonna
will.
end up doing one version of this, and then live with it, and have to make corrections what we've done.
Yep. It's hard for me to envision that people are really gonna wanna do that, because they're gonna trigger subdivision in,
Yeah.
so.
You mean adding one more
Yeah,
unit would trigger subdivision even if
Get
3
to
are
3,
already
yeah.
existing?
Yeah, if you're at 2 and you add 1, you're at 3.
Even if
And
it's
if you're
and-
at
and
3, then you add 1,
subsequently.
you're at 4. Right.
So if that,
Yeah, if you
that,
tripped
that's
it
going
over
to
three,
stop people
yeah.
from doing it. They don't want
If
to
it's
get
in one
involved with
building, it goes through
subdivision.
site plan.
I can imagine.
So
Yeah.
They don't wanna
site
pay for
plan's
it.
gonna have all
No.
these
They,
things.
they want to, people want
Other
to
rep.
live under the limit of more red tape.
All right, we good moving on? Let's see how it works. Hopefully it won't be weird, but if it is, we'll
Wait,
change it.
so I missed the
Me too.
trajectory.
So
Are we okay with that?
we're agreeing by consensus, which is a slim consensus, um, to allow ADUs to be paired with duplexes or multifamily
Multifamily.
dwellings.
Okay.
And we're a little
Because it
shaky
will go
on
into
it, so we'll
subdivision.
see how the public hearing goes. I think we talked about short-term rentals, so.
We killed the motion.
Definitely.
Yeah.
We
Please.
killed that.
Let's
today.
zip through it.
Definitely talked about.
And then I think on these definitions, Aga's comment was that, oops, we are missing a page, aren't we? Or are we?
No,
I
it's
just-
there.
No,
I
we're-
just-
we're okay now.
I need better fingernails. She's saying she's not sure we have to add all of these. We're obviously are adding accessory dwelling unit.
Can anybody put these side by side on a spreadsheet, so we can see what our definition is and what the other, so we can do a quick comparison? If we do that and send it out, somebody, I'll tell you what, I'll put it on a spreadsheet and I'll send it to everybody.
Thank you so much.
I'll send it through.
That's,
and
thank you,
Then
Rob.
we can, make the decisions of which definition that we
Because I
want.
can't send email.
Okay, and except that there are some things we've already decided. We've decided on accessory dwelling unit.
I'm just gonna take the whole list
That's fine.
and do it. We already, under comments, we already have it defined, so it's all
Okay.
set.
Mhm.
Okay? Dee?
But anytime we're saying affordable as housing and affordable housing development, there should be a stipulation that anytime the word affordable is used, it means this formula that defines affordable housing.
Yeah, so I think because we've agreed to have that section and we're gonna incorporate
Right.
the law, by definition, we're gonna end up with, that was a weird, by definition, we're gonna end up with some of these definitions, right?
Right.
Yes.
Well,
A long day?
there'll be
If
stipulations rather
you're concerned
than.
about the
than,
optics of affordable housing, there's no reason you have to use the term affordable housing. You can adopt the definition and call it whatever you want.
Right.
You call
think
it fair
we should call
housing,
it
you
that.
can call it high-density housing, you can call it whatever, whatever term you want to describe it as. You don't have to use the term affordable if you think that it is going to misrepresent what is actually being done here.
Yep.
I agree.
But if we have the definition, and it's very clear that it's not public housing, and because I think that,
Well, it could be.
Let's argue over definitions when we have.
well, but public housing,
Yeah, I agree.
that really deals with another agency housing people in our community. That's what people don't like.
I think that's why Aga's suggesting we can call it what we want to call it and then just be consistent. So that, quote, affordable housing section might be called the fair housing
You
section.
call
or
it D's housing section.
Dee's housing section, Deb's housing section. And then you're just gonna have the stipulations and the definitions will use that word.
Yeah, but it's so clearly a euphemism, and I think it's devious.
So why don't we let Rolf do his homework? We know we're gonna have to have some sort of definition, that we're gonna have to adopt the state requirements, which probably will need to include definitions for affordable housing, because we're creating a section. And for now, Aga, you can call it affordable housing, and then if we decide to call
Oh.
it something else, we can.
Let's call it applicable housing, because it would be applicable to the standards and definitions of
Why don't we
2003.
decide that when we get, after Rolf's done?
And that has no connotation to it.
We're moving on. So you have here, Rolf, as you can see, some things are already in the code. So I don't know if you want to focus
Well,
on the things that aren't.
I'm just
or-
gonna do the entire chart,
Okay,
Jeez,
and you
I
guys
don't
can do
even know how
whatever
to
you want.
do
with it.
that.
Once you get it.
okay, thank you.
You're looking good tonight.
And we've done
You look
O.
good tonight. Thanks.
I don't know that we've done P, but what I would say, I guess what I would say, Aga, to put you on a sort of spot, is there anything we haven't considered for LD 2003 that we should be considering?
I'm sure there is. What I can suggest to you is, as you guys get into the actual drafting and as I get into the drafting, there will be issues that come up and we can discuss them at that point. I think, you're doing a great job covering the ADU field. I think we'll handle the affordable housing piece as we've discussed. The one thing that is not clear to me at this juncture is if we need to do anything else with the extra dwelling unit allowance or just simply treat them as any other dwelling unit. I think we can probably do that, but that's something I need to give some thought to.
Yeah, I kind of feel squishy that, I kind of feel like it's squishy and we probably need to do something.
Yeah.
Because we're saying you can have up to 4, we're not, but yet,
Yeah.
she's saying there
The
could,
piece that is still completely unresolved across the state for a number of communities is if you do get an affordable housing project proposed, how are you going to deal with the enforceability of those provisions for the long run? Usually you have a third party, like a housing district,
right.
doing that. And, most municipalities in Maine are not positioned to, enforce these provisions. And we're still waiting for feedback from DECD on that issue. I don't know if we can do anything right now, but I just want to flag it because I think that's a really big issue. Another issue is with respect to affordable housing. If somebody proposes a project that is in your more rural areas and is not tapped into public sewer, they're going to have to do an engineered septic system. Those engineered systems have a life to them. They don't last forever. And it's a nightmare when they break because, especially with affordable housing development, because then you have a fight as to who is going to fix it and who's going to pony up the money to fix it.
Yes.
And oftentimes towns get embroiled in those legal battles that are costly and very difficult to handle. So,
It's good to remember.
when we're drafting the affordable housing section, we should be thinking about those two issues and whether we can preempt some of those problems up front by, for example, requiring a performance bond for the septic system if one is being proposed, so that there is money or a line of credit, so that there is money to repair it when inevitably it fails, and you have 20 residents hooked up to it. Those are the two things that pop into my mind right up top. There will probably be more as we get into the weeds.
I would say if it's okay with the board, I think if incorporating some of those, what sounds like very logical ideas about a bond for the septic system, certainly makes sense. Are people okay with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I ask another question? Is there a time limit involved with this? I mean, are we talking about someone coming in and putting up those additional units at one time, which is a subdivision? Or if someone says, I have a house and I want to put another house, and I want another house and another house, how long can that span of time be, particularly in rural areas where you're dealing with the life of a septic system and the septic design?
I think from what we discussed earlier, I think it could be, especially if they want to avoid triggering subdivision, it could be.
Go
I
on for
think
years.
the rule is you can split it every 5 years right
years.
now,
Yeah.
so it could be 20 years.
Yeah.
So, what I'm saying is, in dealing with that, would that mean then over the course of that time, it would be understood that each additional dwelling unit would have to have its own septic system and well?
I think if I remember, I guess, but if I remember, so first of all, I think if I remember correctly, didn't we already say that they have to?
That's what I thought, they
Or is
had to
that-
have a common system.
No, they could have individual systems if it's big enough.
Yeah, if they
But
meet
then
all
if
the
they're
requirements.
individual houses, I think it's the code officer that worries about that.
System has to be designed
Yeah,
to meet the minimum requirements.
Yeah,
Right.
there's state regulations.
they gotta meet the plumbing code every
Right.
time they
That's what
build
I'm
it, so
saying.
it's really up to them, I guess, as long as they meet that code.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking of the case we've had recently where it was a very old and bizarre system that they were trying to tag
In
into.
case we still have.
And I think that taking into account August's statement that these septic systems have a life, that we should not say, well, oh, this was done 25 years ago, we'll accept the plans for that. And it may not have any application for what we're talking about now, but I was gonna bring that up anyway. Because for somebody coming in and said, I had a piece of property and did this 45 years ago and I want to tuck into this, I think we don't say, well, we'll accept those 45-year-old plans, that we have to go
Okay, well,
back to
let's
ground
address
zero.
that at different time, and,
Yeah, I know.
and the site plan does give us some tools in terms of that, I mean, you
But
know.
are you gonna have a similar situation with this
I-
fourth house?
I mean, you could, but I think when it's individual dwelling units, they're gonna have to follow plumbing, I mean, they gotta follow
Yeah.
building code and
I
plumbing
would
code.
think so, and then they can't, their distance requirements and things too.
I
Exactly.
mean, and when your septic fails, it fails, you have to do something.
If there's a building permit adding a bedroom and
Most people
kitchen,
don't know that
Yeah.
we have
Because
a
they're adding a
septic
bedroom
cleaning
will require-
ordinance, did you know that?
Yeah.
the
No, I
check, the
didn't know
system is,
Yeah, you have
can
to
be
clean your
adequate for
septic
the.
every
So
year.
Brenda's gonna go look up the original permit.
Most people
Right.
do it every 3 to 5.
So, okay,
I
guys,
think it's three.
moving right along, I think, on the miscellaneous questions, those, we have answers.
Yep.
So, I think we're done with this.
Did you have an answer to the driveway question?
Well, not specifically, that's what Brenda told me. So what I understand is that, this is what I understand, is that the state, as well as the town,
Controls curb
doesn't
cuts.
prohibit, but heavily discourages and has said no multiple times to people having more than one driveway for a single home.
What about?
That in certain situations, what Brenda has done is if they have a lot and then they have to build a garage or something, and the shape of the lot is such that it would be not a legal hardship, but it wouldn't work in a reasonable way for them to use the existing driveway, then she has permitted a second driveway if necessary. But as an example, so, the question I asked was really about what's gonna happen when there's an ADU that's separated from the house, is it gonna be allowed or not? And at least from what I understand from Brenda, is if that's the only way to access the ADU and it has to be built there, then they're gonna allow a second driveway. Go ahead.
Yeah, my question is about semicircular driveways. Are they permitted or not?
I think generally no. In our neighborhood, we just, both our association, building committee, and the code enforcement officer said no. To make a U-shaped driveway
Which
Yeah,
has
yeah.
with two
entrances.
Yeah,
entrances,
2 entrances.
pretty much a no-no, unless you have a very unique situation. So we literally just killed one. I know that Dan Harden has mentioned a number of times he's tried to get another driveway or a U-shaped driveway, and he said the number 10, but let's just say a lot, and the state wouldn't allow it, not just the municipality. So I'm not sure what the reg is, but that seems to be, there might be one, but that seems to be the practice. But it sounds like it's a common sense sort of, we don't want extra driveways unless we really need them for any number of safety reasons and buffer reasons and.
Okay.
But normally you would think that anybody who put in an ADU, it would be on the same lot. There's a way to get onto the lot.
Well, they want to not have it be expensive, they're not going to want to build a whole.
Yeah, they don't want
Yeah.
another driveway.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay, Aga, do you have what you
Unless
need
it's
to
a
create a
river.
draft?
Or a mountain.
Yes, I do. And, what I'll try to
But you
do
can
is
focus on
it.
create a draft
Dee,
with some
can-
comments.
I'm trying to hear Aga.
Yep.
I'll try to create a draft with some comments in the margins so that you can see where I've adopted the recommendations you've made today and where I've deviated and why, if there are any places like that, so that we can have that follow-up discussion.
Okay, that sounds good.
What is your timetable? When do you meet next? for
Well, would
discussion?
you be able to do it by by the third, in time for the third Tuesday in October, which is when?
17th.
The 17th, so we would need a few days to review it. I don't know if we need a full week, but certainly say three days or so. We have a meeting on a Tuesday, so if we had it on a Friday.
Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th.
That would
Oh,
be,
boy.
is that doable?
Yes,
Okay,
Friday, October 13th. I will
October
get it back
13th?
for you.
okay,
Okay.
sounds great.
And you will let me, I'm not gonna touch the RN dimensional requirement. If you decide between now and then how you'd like to handle that, just shoot me an email.
Okay.
And I will build it in, otherwise we can tackle it on the 17th.
Yeah,
And do-
and however
do
we
you
do it,
want
it's gonna be a separate warrant question, if we do it, assuming we do it.
I will
want
block off
150
the
feet.
evening of the 17th to join you in case you'd like me there. No pressure, if the answer is no, I won't take offense.
No,
But,
I think it's
I'll
good.
be available if you need me.
Okay, super.
Excellent.
Gee, we're gonna bob for apples.
Bob for ADUs.
Thank you so much, Aga.
Thank you.
Much
Thank you.
appreciated.
Good to
Thank
see you
you.
again,
Nice
Olga.
to meet you
Yeah.
folks on board. Take care.
Take
Yeah.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yes.
Okay, on to.
It's amazing, she doesn't look any gray and wrinkled.
She's
She
not,
looks just the same.
she's not
Having
old
3
enough
kids,
to
yeah.
be great.
No, but with all this off
Okay,
her desk, I would be,
So, I think we've more or less done, item 4 on the workshop. And we need to schedule a public hearing for subdivisions. Do we want to do that in October and do that like at 5 and then go on to LD 2003? Yeah, at 5:30?
I think that's a good
Which
idea.
subdivision is it?
What's that?
Which subdivision?
No, not the subdivision regs. Remember, we held
Gonna make
hands
those
and we have a
changes.
public hearing copy.
Never mind. Okay, never mind.
So I'm suggesting that we do that on the 17th
Yeah.
Okay.
first. And then we'll get on to LD 2003, and assuming we need legal, we'll tell her to come at 5:30 or something like that.
That's on the 17th?
The 17th,
For
What
5
is this
o'clock.
October 13th?
for 5 o'clock.
she's gonna give us a
Get us
copy,
documents by the 13th.
so
Oh,
we
the
can look it
docs.
over.
Vote on that.
Oh, Rolf, do you
Uh,
have your
yeah.
comparison?
So guys, I think I'll make a motion that we hold a public hearing for the subdivision regulations on October 17th at 5 PM.
Second.
All the comparisons.
Seconded by Angie. I made the motion, and any discussion? All in favor? 5-0. And the only other thing I can think of is just to, if you're gonna sign up for one of the training things, let Laura Lee know. She sent out an email.
I got that, but it's not getting to her, so I will let her know.
There is an actual workshop on October 12th, which I can't go to, which normally they just do webinars, so.
Is
that
it a
might-
webinar?
But that's it's in Augusta, it's in
I'll
person.
be in Florida.
Ken?
Yeah. I heard that there's an inter-town meeting coming up in October at Denmark. Is that true?
I believe so. Are you guys on his mailing list? No?
Who's mailing us?
Tom Carradine?
The Intertown Group mailing list, Tom.
No, I'm not.
Is
Well,
there
we
any
can add
reason,
you.
I get those.
is there any reason to go to that one?
I forget what the agenda is, but make a note to forward it to everybody and have you added to the,
Yeah, it would be nice to know whether to go.
when we adjourn the meeting, I can look it up on my iPad and let you guys, whoever's interested, know.
Oh, okay.
Okay? I'd accept a motion to adjourn. Moved by Mr. Gibbs, seconded by Ms. Cook. All in favor? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.